Hey guys, thanks for joining me today as we continue with the Joy Revolution. I love a good comeback story. The story of someone who's failed, who's blown it. Maybe they've really screwed up big time and life's against them, all the odds are against them, but somehow they have a comeback in life. You know what's amazing is the Bible is full of comeback stories. And one comeback story we see is with David. We know David is the young boy who was started out as a worshiper and then a shepherd, then a warrior, and later he was the king. And as we read about his life, we know that he had a terrible moral and spiritual failure where he committed adultery. Some would even say he raped a woman. And then he arranged the situations on the battlefield to where her husband would surely be killed in battle, just to hide his sin, just to cover it all up. We later find out that God allows the prophet to confront David, and he's faced with this sin, and he's faced with the tragedy of what he's done. And when we read Psalm 51, we see David take responsibility for his sin and take responsibility for this gross failure in his life, and he acknowledges the guilt and the shame of it all. Then we get to verses 10 through 12, and he asks God for three specific things. The first thing is this. He says, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." David realized that at the heart of his issues was his own heart. And he realized that he was powerless to change his own heart, that he needed God to do a work of recreation just in his own heart and his own motives and the affections of his life, that he needed God to just restore him from the inside out. Then he prayed this: "Cast me not away from your presence, and please don't take your Holy Spirit from me." David realized that if his life was going to be restored, it could only be restored in the environment of God's presence, that he needed the Holy Spirit to be at work in him and around him in order for his life to be restored. And he didn't want to continue trying to even live without an ongoing awareness of God's presence being with him. And then he said this: "Restore in me the joy of your salvation." When he said restore, he was saying, God, can we go back to the beginning? Can we just hit the reset button? Can I know again the joy of knowing you, of your salvation, of your goodness, of your freedom, of your deliverance, of your mercy at work in my life? God, can you do this in me? See, David realized that if he was going to have a comeback, that he had to align himself once again with God's joy. And he had to allow joy to extinguish and silence shame. We learned several weeks ago that shame and joy cannot coexist, because grace and faith are the parents of joy, and shame just wages war against God's grace and against our faith. Shame says things like this: you've done too much, you've gone too far, you've stepped so far out of God's grace that God's grace can't reach you. I mean, you've blown it so big this time that surely God's grace can't extend to you. So how can you even trust him to forgive you? How can you even have faith that he even loves you, that he cares about you, because you probably screwed it up so bad that there's no reason to even trust in his grace? Guys, see, joy can't be conceived in that environment. Or at best, joy is so suppressed that it just seems non-existent. But like David realized, if I can come back into alignment with your joy at work in my life, then the lying voice of shame can be silenced and I can be restored. Guys, my prayer for you this week is this: is if you're struggling with shame, if you have that voice of shame just in the back of your mind, pointing that finger, questioning God's grace, causing you to doubt his goodness and doubt his forgiveness and his love for you, causing you to doubt that he even wants to forgive you. Guys, my prayer for you is like David. You'll say, God, do something in my heart. God, do in my heart what only you can do in my heart. God, I need your when you allow his joy to silence shame, you, like David, can have your own comeback. Thanks for joining me. Can't wait to be with you next week. Bye-bye.